Hey folks, in today's episode I've got Eric Siren on the show, and today we are talking, well, really about a news story that's come out in the last week or two here. It was found out that Microsoft has, in certain cases, provided BitLocker keys to federal law enforcement here in the US. And that spawns a bunch of different questions for myself, for Eric, for a bunch of other people. And we start the episode by talking about this after our usual, recurring segments, but it turned into a conversation about, key storage, key escrow, the proper handling of keys, what SysAdmins can do to prevent this type of situation, what's the lasting long-term effect of BitLocker keys being essentially shareable in some cases by Microsoft. So we answered these questions and lots more in today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey everyone, it's a new week. That means it's time for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by SysAdmins for SysAdmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks out there working in the trenches day in and day out to keep the digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and I've got Eric Siren with me. I guess I could say, what do you say, Eric? Recording from location or whatever it's called?
It's reporting live on location from Orange Beach, Alabama. No. Of course, by the time you're watching this, it's not live anymore, but I'm alive, so I'm not really sure how that... we're supposed to be on a beach vacation. I was kind of hoping you could see the ocean in the background here. You can't, the position of it. And I tried before you hit record, I was holding the camera up, and you can't see anything behind me, but there's the ocean. The Gulf of Mexico is over my right shoulder here. And normally this would be, beach and fun and sun and all that. And it's 42 Fahrenheit right now. What does that translate to for our European folks? Let's see, 42 Fahrenheit to Celsius.
I had to guess.
It is 5.5 degrees Celsius.
Right. I'd like to point out that here in Michigan, it's supposed to be negative 13 below tonight. So
yeah,
I would love 45 degrees, but
yeah. So to kind of anchor this episode in time, since we have a delay between recording and publication, if you were watching the United States weather map over the what would be my past week, we had that gigantic storm system that basically started somewhat west of the Mississippi and then went all the way up the coast. And so we drove from western Illinois all the way down through that to Alabama. And we delayed, so we weren't driving on the day of the storm, but we did go the day after and then split into 2 days and the day after that. And it was still quite treacherous. And then we are now, 4 or 5 days out, and still a lot of that is not recovered. So down here on the coast where, it would ordinarily be at least T-shirt weather for somebody from Western Illinois. No, I've got a sweatshirt on and my...
I was going to say a very warm-looking hat.
Yeah. And it's fun going to some of these places where folks have never done this before. So it was interesting, trying to find places to use the bathroom and get gas because a lot of power is down because the ice was forming on the power lines down here. They're not ready for that. The trees nothing's ready for that. And it all just kind of came crashing down. And so huge portions of the state out of power. And so we're going into places and that normally would have a couple hundred people. They had many hundred people. And I'm looking why is every single person here dressed in hunting gear? And then it dawns on me, that's probably the only cold weather gear they have.
They have, yeah.
Oh. And they're looking at me, and I've got this on, and this is my sweatshirt, but I had a heavier coat with it. And I'm like, wow, he came ready, and you don't even understand. My really heavy gear is still up in Illinois. That was just my mid-level stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, in Michigan, 45 degrees, that's shorts weather, man.
Well, now, of course, where we were at, it was not 45. It is down here at the Gulf of Mexico, it's 45 degrees, but where we were at was Teens at high. In the high,
Yeah.
it broke into teens. It was mostly single digits. And again, in a part of the country that just doesn't see that very often.
Yeah.
And so it's been interesting. So yeah, I thought, it'll be fun as I got to get this podcast recorded anyway. Let y'all kind of see. I'm out here in the sunny, warm vacation part of the United States, and look what I have to wear.
I'm gonna I'm gonna have to edit in some snowflakes or something that'll match the warm hat you've got going on there. So anyway, that is our very first weather segment on SysAdmin Weekly. So
We have to be ready for everything as sysadmins.
That's right. That's right.
This right here. This is your business continuity and disaster recovery story.
And environmental regulation. I mean, we've got that too.
There you go.
So we have to have a first in every episode, right? Well,
That's
anyway,
right. That's
we
right.
appreciate you taking some time out of the day there, Eric, to spend some time with us. Of course, today we are talking about maybe a frigid topic. I mean, we are talking about BitLocker and cloud key escrow and encrypted data, and the fact that Microsoft gave BitLocker decryption keys to the federal government. But yeah, that's a whole different thing. So that's the news headline that spawned the idea for this episode. But we're going to kind of drill into that and some of the associated technology areas around that event. So that's what we've got going on today's episode. But before we get to that, I suppose let's take care of our housekeeping items. So again, first things first, if you're new to the show, welcome. Glad you're here. Hope you find some value from today's episode. We our intros are a little bit long, right? But we talk some tech, we talk current news, and then we finally get into our main segment. I think we've been averaging about 20 minutes in so far. So if you want to go straight to the topic, you can forward to about 25 minutes in, you'll get straight to the topic. But with that, all of the links associated with the show can be found at www.sysadminweekly.com. And it's official. The new community hangout spot is live. The GitHub discussion boards are live, and the link is right there on sysadminweekly.com as well. So be sure to check that out. Basically, it's a forum style, and I've had a couple of questions from folks have reached out to me on LinkedIn. Okay, why GitHub discussions, right? Well, there's a couple different reasons. The big requirement for me was low barrier to entry. I didn't want anyone to have to install an app or set up an account or anything like that, right? Figure 95% of sysadmins already have a GitHub account. So GitHub works in a browser, it works on mobile. It's available pretty much anywhere that you are as a sysadmin. So we set up a discussions board inside of a Git repo. And the other nice thing about that is it is very, what do I want to say, historical. So all of that is retained just like you would a proper forum. It's not, I guess, semi-ephemeral like a Discord channel would be. Now, that said, I don't know for a fact if Discord channels are ephemeral or not, but they certainly are not easily as searchable as, a GitHub webpage, right? So anyway, a lot of different reasons. I'll put the link to that discussion board right in the show notes so you folks can check that out. Come in, introduce yourself, talk some tech. I'm going to be posting some notes along with every episode and every newsletter there, which reminds me, the newsletter, we are back to our weekly publishing cadence with the newsletter in its new format, which is more commentary oriented. And you can find that at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com, as well as everything else we've already mentioned. So I think that's all my plugs taken care of. And so now we get to our regular recurring segments for the show. The first one that I suppose we'll go with is our News React segment. And this is the segment of the show where my co-host and I, we discuss a news headline, a tech news headline that caught our eye over, the last couple of weeks here. So Eric, I'll let you go first, my friend. What do you got?
So I've seen at least two now CEOs saying, white collar jobs are going to be replaced by AI within whatever period of time.
Right.
And and I've had a lot of thoughts on a lot of things. I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can, but basically, none of the people saying this have ever even had a job by anything that I would. And I had a longer like mental thing on it. I was going to do like maybe like a long form podcast where I can just ramble and people can delete, stop, whatever. So I don't want to. I don't want to stick that in here, but sort of, I come from a more blue collar background where most of your management was promoted from within their ranks.
Right.
So I'm not going to say it's the system or it's necessarily the best, or it certainly has problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But your people in management, like if you go into a sausage factory, the people who ran that sausage factory knew how the sausage was made. You've got people now in these CEO positions who maybe kind of have an idea of how the sausage is made, but they've never even seen it done, much less actually done it.
Right.
So when they're sitting there going, "Oh yeah, your job is going to be eliminated," like, sir, you don't even understand my job. How can you sit there and tell me that this product that doesn't work correctly on its best day is going to actually eliminate me in any rational time frame? I'm not going to say that AI won't improve and get better. We all know that it will. But I don't think they realize how far they are from AI doing basic entry level stuff. And I have said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it. As an MBA who understands what the CEO position entails, let me tell you, some of the first white collar jobs that AI will be able to do will be CEO positions.
You're the first person I've heard say that.
Yeah, so maybe some of these people need to be a little bit less quiet, because you know what? If the board of directors says, you know what we could do is eliminate an $80 million annual position with AI, you think they're not going to do that?
Yeah. Huh? It's funny. I saw a post on Reddit a week or two back where somebody was telling a story about how entire departments were starting to get edged out because of
Yes.
AI. And
Yes.
they had a big company, all hands talking about it, about how they were going to start reducing teams. And somebody asked the question, like, okay, well, if entire teams are going to be removed, what's management going to be doing? Crickets.
Yeah.
Silence.
How does this affect you? Oh, it doesn't. Yeah.
Well, I think the point is that management hadn't thought about that. If there's no teams to manage.
Hold on. I'm going to put, that's a lie. No, sorry. You're not lying because you're going off what you know. Management is lying because
right.
What they're going to do is they're going to cut these departments and then they're going to quietly hire those people back at a reduced rate.
Yeah,
because that's already happening.
That's true.
That's what it is. They're going, well, okay, so we still, turns out, yeah, we just like you said, we don't actually know what you do, so now we need to bring you back, but we're not going to pay you as much as before because we still think AI can do. They're going to come up with an excuse. The whole point here is saving money, and they're going to blame AI for it, but the truth is they just don't want to pay you what you're worth.
Yeah.
Right? They're trying to get all of us down to minimum wage and then delete minimum wage too and get us all to work. That's the end goal. And don't ever convince yourself that it's anything else. And yeah, so sorry to say that you're lying. You're not lying, but they're spinning a fable.
No, I know. I didn't take it that way. So all good. So, well, we'll have to we'll have to find a platform for you to have your rant on that at some point here. I'm kind of curious myself, so we'll have to make that happen somehow. I mean, I sat up here and I ranted about web browsers for a whole episode at the end of 2025. So, I mean, I'm sure we can work something out. So, anyway.
I plugged myself here. I'm going to get jacked back in. See me leaning around. I'm not ignoring you. All right, there we go. Gotcha. All right.
The joys of recording remotely. So, all good. All fun. Well, I guess I'll go on to my news react item, and this is going to be a short one. It's more of an FYI for folks. So if people recall, I think it was last year sometime, scratch that, 2024 sometime. I keep forgetting it's 2026 now. But Microsoft had made the announcement that they were going to retire basic authentication for SMTP auth for Exchange Online. And they weren't going to just cut it off one day. It was going to be kind of this gradual thing where throughout a period of time, they'd start blocking this percentage of SMTP auth requests. And then a couple months later, it'd be this larger amount and then this larger amount. And they were originally supposed to close off basic authentication for SMTP auth in September 2025. But following, because I'm quoting the article now, and I'll put this article in the show notes, folks. It's from Office 365 for IT pros. Good website. I'll link everybody to it. But to quoting the articles here, Microsoft adjusted those dates. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Hold on. I lost my spot. But following customer pushback, Microsoft adjusted those dates and in June 2025 announced their intention to begin rejecting a small percentage of SMTP author submissions on March 1st, 2026. And then the percentage would gradually increase to reach 100% on April 30th. Well, that's gotten pushed back again. And let's see here. Now, tenant administrators can reverse the second half of 2027. Microsoft will announce the final drop-dead removal date when basic auth. So basically, we've got another year now. So sometime in 2027. And I was reading through here, like, why? Basic SMTP auth has been around forever. They made this announcement a long time ago. Like, we know as an industry that it's not great from a security posture perspective. Basically, what they found was, and I'm quoting the article here, quote, customers, quote, face real challenges modernizing legacy email workflows. And I'll be the first to concede that, yes, if I have a custom homegrown application that does basic SMTP auth, I have to rebuild the application to take into account modern authentication, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take, though? I can't see it taking a year or two. There's special cases, I know, and not every case is the same. But it feels like it should be enough. And again, I approach this from the security admin's point of view, the CISO point of view, right? Mm-hmm. So I asked the question, like, well, why is that not long enough? I just want basic SMTP auth to go bye-bye because, it makes us security guys nervous, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I would love to know what kind of legacy email workflows are out there that are so difficult that they cannot be changed in that time frame? And
let me help you then.
Sure.
Let me help you out. I think I can hit that for you. Sure. So we're going to first of all set aside all those crap vendors who haven't updated their apps since like 1997 and have no intention of ever set them aside for a minute. Okay. They're all our collective enemy, and we all know who they are. Like my notification systems that I have built use basic auth because I don't want to deal with anything else. Yep. And it was fine at the time because the relays were all on-prem.
Yep.
And the endpoints were all on-prem. And so I was relaying from
traversed public internet.
Correct. And what did traverse the network was basically this server's having a problem. Right. So even if it had gotten out into the world, probably so what?
Right.
The services stopped. Ooh, is that vital information for a hacker? Not very helpful, honestly. So, yeah, so what? Well, we hate your on-prem exchange, and we hate on-prem everything. Everything needs to be in the cloud. And the most obvious thing to put in the cloud was actually email because most of your email is not internal. It does traverse the internet anyway. So, okay, that didn't actually break my heart very much to go to the cloud with email. But I still don't want to change those off on those. And I'm talking like server alert systems, but I can't even, like if you told me right now to give you an inventory of the things I have that use email for alerting, I'm going to miss something.
Yeah.
And that is kind of what I think is going on. And it's all basic auth because I don't want to go in and deal with anything else. Right. And some of this stuff is older than I am. So.
Yeah, and that's true. I can see it from that perspective too. If you've got a large environment, you've got stuff that's sitting around since 10 years before you even got there, trying to find basic SMTP auth packets in a packet capture on a massive network. Yeah, I could definitely see the concern about missing something for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
And then I could also see the pushback. Well, if you're not getting those emails now because you don't even know where they are, is it that big of a problem? Like, not a problem until it is, I guess. Right. I don't know. So I'm not even really gonna defend what it is. But I promise you, if I'm doing it, other people are doing it too.
Right.
Like out of all the things that I have to deal with, and this is, and let's also be very mindful of our fellow sysadmins here. Out of all the things I have to deal with, I just keep getting more. I can't even
Yeah.
fix the problems I've got that are plaguing
Yeah.
me from day to day. And then like, oh yeah,
Agreed.
that email that your alarm system has sent twice in the last 5 years. We need you to update the. Oh, I got to go in and plug in all this TLS and all this. I got to give it a real account. I can't just do by IP address anymore. And I don't want to.
And not only that, like you have to have at least a working knowledge of the new modern authentication workflows, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another skill you have to go learn. And in a way, and I've said this on the show before, it's like we're all kind of becoming secondary security team members, right?
Yeah,
Whether we want
which
to or
was
not.
going to happen. I mean, that was inevitable, honestly. But
Yep.
so much of it now is like, this is not something I can just. Nobody can do it for me, really, right?
Yep.
And so it's hard. It's a lot,
It
and
is.
we're all so like, oh, I have so many real problems. Now I have to do that. This doesn't feel like a real problem. So
And I guess it's easy for us security guys to say that too. I'm saying that with this perspective that you've provided now. It's easy for us security guys to say that because we have that working knowledge of modern authentication. We know how
right,
those workflows work already. We know both sides of that of SMTP basic auth and the new one. And so we're asking the question like, this stuff's easy. Well, we already know it. That's
yeah.
why.
And guys like me have dozens, if not hundreds, of endpoints to go fiddle with to, in our minds, not actually.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same when we're done as it was when we started. And like, oh, that's obnoxious. And uh, the other part of it, I think, also not only are you security minded, but you're looking at email as a communications tool. Where a lot of people have been saying for a long time, email is not really the platform that we should be using for this kind of stuff. There should be something else, but there isn't anything that's better.
Right.
SMS isn't going to do it, so on and so forth. There's all these other things that maybe we shouldn't do this. Like, okay, give me that plan B. Because I
Right.
would agree, email is really not how I want to get alarms. Email should be for, human to human communication, but it's not. So,
It's the tool we
but
had.
if you're coming at it from the standpoint of human to human communication, it seems ridiculous that you wouldn't use the best authentication and security that you could get,
Right.
right? At all
Yep.
times. That seems very obvious to me. And then but these systems, that's not what they're doing, right?
Right. Uh yeah, so good discussion there. We'll have to keep an eye on that one and see how it goes. But looks like, those folks that are still working on it, you got another year. So I'll be sure to include a link to that in the show notes so you can take a look at it. So I guess with that, we can move on to our nerd hour segment. And of course, it doesn't take an hour, but this is the segment of the show where my co-host and we talk about the nerdy, geeky things that we've been doing in either in our professional lives or our personal lives. And I guess selfishly, I'll go first on this one. And again, trying to utilize as many different portions of the uh, recording platform we use here. I'm going to share my screen, but I'll be sure to uh, describe things in great detail for those folks that may be listening in the car. So I have been, as people who have been listening to a lot of the recent episodes know, I've been doing a lot with lightweight Kubernetes, so K3S in my home lab. I think I've moved probably about 80% of my workloads now to Kubernetes as opposed to virtual machines and other things. And we did an episode about abstraction. I think that was you and I, Eric. We did an episode
Yes.
about abstraction not that long ago. And timing is funny because I ran into an issue with my Kubernetes cluster where abstraction bit me in the rear end, actually. So, what you see on the screen here is Longhorn. And Longhorn, basically, what it does is it uh, uses the underlying physical disks, or the virtual disks in this case, uses the underlying storage in each of the nodes of the cluster and builds and presents block-based storage to the cluster. So you can basically stripe your workloads store them on the actual nodes, actual compute nodes in the Kubernetes cluster, and make use of the storage that they have. And so I've got a 4-node cluster here, and you can see just based on the metrics on the screen here, I've got 7 volumes. I've got 455 gigabytes storage schedulable, and then 4 nodes, right? Now, Eric, you're an infrastructure guy. I've known you for a long time. Looking at this screen, if I asked you the question, how much storage is currently usable in this cluster, what would you say the answer is?
455 gigs.
And that is exactly what I thought. That was exactly my thought too. But that is actually not the case. While there may be 455 gigs schedulable, this is a case where you have to understand how the underlying storage in Longhorn works. So let me tell you what happened here. I was working on standing up an apt cacher ng container. Basically, it's think of like wsus, but for Debian machines, Debian Linux machines, right? And so I was just trying to carve off a 100 gigabyte volume. Now, by default in Longhorn, when you carve off a volume, the default is 3 replicas. So it will keep 3 replicas of that volume somewhere in the cluster. Now, if I go to node, I can see all the different nodes that are contained in this cluster, right? And the important bit here is the allocated column. So you can see on nodes 1, 2, and 3, there's not 100 gigabytes available on any of those nodes. So even though the overall schedulable is 455, there's not 100 gigs available to schedule on those particular nodes. So therefore, Longhorn throws up its hands, and it tries to create the disk, but it doesn't tell you that, hey, you don't have enough storage on this node and this node. It just fails to connect the disk, right? And then I, as the admin, have to go figure that out and triage it. And then I got to the point to where it wasn't attaching the storage, and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop trusting the abstraction. I need to go get the man file out for Longhorn and actually figure out what it does with its storage under the hood. And so I had to peel back the abstraction layers and actually get that deep understanding that you and I talked about in that episode we recorded, Eric. So, folks, if you're interested in that episode where Eric and I talk about abstraction and how it's making sysadmins worse in some ways, I'll put that in the show notes as well too. So that's the geeky nerdy stuff I've been working on lately. How about you, Eric? What do you got? Well, I mean, to people that program in that language as well too. I mean, I can do Python, but C. You mentioned C, right? Not C#. C.
Well, I think C++ has diverged far enough from C. We should be very clear that they are separate languages and
yes,
have been for a long time.
That's true.
Most well-formed C will compile under C++, but even then, the generated code is different. So,
right.
Yeah, I for a long time C was my favorite language. It really was, because C is kind of this really thin veneer over assembly, and my assembly is awful, but I kind of like knowing you can't get any closer to the metal than this.
It's funny. Go ahead.
Well, I want to be careful too, because I'm the first person who will tell you there's a Donald Knuth quote that I use constantly that preemptive optimization is the root of all evil, and a lot of people who program in C are kind of doing that to themselves. Like, yeah, it's more code and it's more work and it's more thought, but man, it's fast, 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 fast. For the most part, anymore, no, 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 no. Unless you're doing something like very few people are ever going to know the difference. So performance is not why I do it. It's mainly that it gives me I have a better understanding of what's happening is why it means a lot to me. And then C++ does add, again, we're going to step up an abstraction layer here. It does things that C cannot do. A lot of abstraction going on under the
Yeah.
hood when it does it, but still feel like I get the power to make the CPU do everything it can do. And I don't have to wonder because like a lot of your modern languages like Python and C Sharp and all that, the languages are fine, but well, I think Python's kind of a terrible language if I'm going to be honest. But what I'm
Fair enough.
getting at
Fair.
is there's a whole lot that goes on behind the scenes that I feel like it may be working harder than it technically has to be and touching things that I may not want it to touch. I guess so. It's not really about performance so much as having that understanding of when things do what. And certain parts, like because I do a lot of systems level stuff and like C Sharp, the whole .NET thing has this whole thing around. It's fine with managed objects, but when you're talking to system objects that are not managed, controlling that memory gets really dicey really fast. So, and again, like we talk about this on other episodes. Well, I code in C Sharp because I don't have to worry about memory. Not how that works. And then when you bring in system components, it's really not how it works. So with C++, it's like, okay, if you use every single new must have exactly one delete. There's your memory management. It really is that easy. I hate to say it. It
Right.
really is. People make it out to be a lot harder than it is, but there is more manual labor involved than there would be in like a Python or something. So
Right.
I'm going off on this really long tangent here. I really apologize for that. It's not what I intended to do, but
No, all good. All good. You're passionate about it, man. That's that's what people want to hear, So, I have to do a sidebar here, say what you will about Python. It's better than Perl. Now, I say that, and it was Jeffrey Snover I heard this joke from initially, and I'm sure I've told this on the show before, and I'm sure you've heard this before,
I
Eric.
know where you're going. I love it.
But the joke is an admin had a management problem, so they created a Perl script, and then they had two management problems. Ta-da!
Yeah, Perl is this is going to hit some of my linguist friends out there. A pigeon. Do you know what a pigeon is?
Well, I know it's a bird, but I know that's not the context we're talking about.
No, PIDGIN. So these are basically ad hoc languages in a way. So what'll happen is you'll get a bunch of people together who none of them speak the same language. And so over time, just through necessity, they will form new languages that are derivatives of theirs and like not any of them, but also components of all of them together. And Perl is the closest thing to a pigeon you're ever going to find that I've ever seen in programming. It just seems like they just took little bits of everything else, but unfortunately they took the worst little bits of everything else and made this disaster piece that's just horrific. Just
Oh,
and I know I'm going to make some people mad because I've seen people out there who get really emotionally attached to Perl and why, but whatever.
it's like those people that are very attached to Kickstart scripts. I still see those things once in a while.
Yeah, they're running around out there, and yeah,
They are.
my big problem with Python is like making white space meaningful is the scariest thing you can do when you live in a world of mixed line ending codes and like getting into when the encoding of your file can make or break something in a way that a human looking at it can't even see what's wrong. Like,
Yup.
yeah, that was there's a
Oh
fatal
man.
flaw right there in the middle of Python with that
There's
whole.
Oh, I've got another story I could go down there regarding a bind DNS server and a space in the config file that caused some issues for a period of time. That's a story for another time, but you can imagine. Anyway,
Oh yeah.
I suppose we should get to our main topic for today, and of course, we are talking about encryption keys, key escrow, and more specifically, this is going to be very BitLocker focused. And let me share the screen again here because I wanted to quote this article a few times. This is the article that really created the idea for this episode. And for those folks that are driving in the car or just listening, can't see what's on the screen, I'll read all the relevant bits here. But the headline reads, Report. Microsoft hands over keys for BitLocker encrypted data to FBI. And the subheading here was interesting to me as well, too. Microsoft tells Forbes that it receives around 20 such requests for BitLocker keys every year. Now, before I move on, for those folks that may not know, BitLocker is basically the encryption mechanism inside of the Windows operating system that protects your laptop from theft, right? Things like that. It actually encrypts the disk. Now, obviously, there's an encryption key that is used to facilitate that encryption. The key is what Microsoft provided the FBI in this particular case. Now, I want to also preface this conversation with the fact that when people break the law and crime happens, right? I think we can all agree that people who have legitimately broken the law need to face consequences, right? That's not what we're talking about in this episode, but I wanted to preface this conversation with that. Now, that said, I'm a big, big advocate for privacy, right? We all have a right to privacy. We all have a right to security. And in a case like this, it doesn't build a rosy picture, in my opinion, of Microsoft when they hand over an encryption key like this. Now, I also know I'm looking at this through the wider lens of the tech industry. Apple has faced similar issues. Google has faced similar issues, and they have both pushed back. I know Apple has. I believe Google has as well too, but I can't think of the incident off the top of my head. So why can't Microsoft, right? Microsoft can surely push back, right? But before I go further, let me continue scrolling down the article here, right? So let me look through the piece that I specifically wanted to cover here. So the keys were handed over in early 2025 following an FBI request during an investigation into alleged unemployment fraud on the Pacific island of Guam. Case is still ongoing. 7 people have been charged, right? So there's like that piece of it. Here's the part where, the spokesperson said that they received 20 such requests a year. And there was another part here where, here's the piece about Apple, fighting this very publicly. I want to make sure. Let's see. Forbes, I don't remember exactly where in the article is, but I'll link the article here. But the big thing that I wanted to point out here, and let me get my my show notes back out, is that having that key, right, allows law enforcement to decrypt basically everything on that drive. And I remember what it was in that article I wanted to call out. They had a forensic expert that they talked to, and they made a really good point. When you provide the BitLocker decryption key, you are providing the FBI, in this case, far larger reach across the data than what is necessary specifically for the alleged crime, right? So instead of just these couple of files that maybe are in question, they have access to the entire drive, right? So that's a problem in and of itself, just above the privacy implications. So that's a problem, right? And the other thing was, a lot of people are asking the question like, well, it's BitLocker. How was Microsoft able to give them the keys? And here's where it gets interesting. And we're going to dive into this a little bit. Because the keys were escrowed inside of the Microsoft cloud, the keys were attached to the Microsoft accounts that were associated with the endpoints. Now, also recall that it wasn't that long ago, Microsoft removed the local user account option inside of Windows 11. So in order to stand up a Windows 11 client PC, you must use a Microsoft account in order to provision that. And then by default, BitLocker gets enabled and that key gets sucked up into the Microsoft cloud. Now put all of that together, brand new machine, brand new user, BitLocker's enabled, great, but my key is at risk from the vendor themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about privacy and security, big problem. So I'll let you get a word in edgewise here, Eric, but that's my starting point for this discussion.
I'm going to explain that sense of unease everyone feels right now, but isn't able to articulate. And I'm going to do it with a piece of history. So you can see that this is not a hypothetical. This is a thing that has happened.
Yep.
There was, I don't know who, there was a person in the United States Navy. The Russians got a really good holdover. I don't know what it was. It doesn't matter. He provided them with enough information for them to decrypt Navy communications. They didn't get it because of and then they were doing like rapid rotation and all that. So Russians were not able to decrypt information in real time, but they were given more than enough information over a period of a long enough time to basically not need necessarily real-time information. They had unbelievable levels of insight into everything the United States military was doing. And to couple that back to what we're looking at right now is if Microsoft has those keys, Microsoft employees have access to those keys. Those people can be bribed, bought. And I also want to remind everyone that Satya Nadella has made it very clear to every single person who works at Microsoft that they're not important and they can be thrown out on the street at the drop of a hat for any reason, including he's just decided their project doesn't mean anything anymore. So you've got a bunch of people with no loyalty to Microsoft. They're afraid to lose their livelihood at any given moment. And they are now in control of God knows how much of the world's data.
Yep.
So if you're not feeling sick to your stomach over the fact that they're just have these keys. And the cool part is, so you're like, crap, I'm going to get all my data off of there. Well, again, remember the Russians were looking at old data and it was still enough.
Yeah.
So, okay, you delete everything. Cool. Is it really gone? The keys are still there. So yeah, this should make everybody like, oh.
Yep. And it does. And I have, over the last year or two, I have developed quite a few, I guess I'll kindly call them gripes about Microsoft for various reasons. And I'll have to go into those in a future episode. But this might be the thing that makes me nuke Windows off of the last remaining device it's on in my house, from a personal use perspective, for a number of reasons. This might be the case, not because like, well, Andy, what do you have to hide?
Right.
Nothing.
Whether I have to hide or not, it's not anybody else's business.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to. It's not even a hide thing. It's just not no one else's business.
Exactly. And to your point, your history lesson, right? If I have learned anything in my, almost 41 years on this planet, is that even though data is not being misused today, even though privacy information is not being misused today, history would dictate that it will be misused at some point.
Yes.
Right? It always
happens. Profit off of it, it'll happen.
Yep. Exactly.
They have motive at all times. They're just waiting for the means and letting these keys exist. These keys shouldn't exist. That's the whole point. Microsoft should not have these keys. And it's not about, and again, I'm going to go back to, and I want to reiterate over and over and over what you had said is like, we're not sitting here condoning crime at all.
Right.
But
exactly.
I'm not a criminal. Like if the FBI read every single file I've ever produced, there's nothing to charge me for because I haven't broken any laws. Still don't want them in there.
Yeah.
So it's not about protecting the criminals. It's about protecting the rest of us.
Yep.
The heck with the criminals. Find another way to do your jobs.
Yep. Now,
because criminals don't just break the law using encrypted OneDrive. So if the only piece of evidence you have that they ever did anything is on OneDrive, like it seems like you're missing a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I want to make sure that I talk about the counterpoints here. I did come across a conversation about this on a Hacker News article, and there was a post here I wanted to make sure I quoted because I can see it a little bit from this perspective. So the poster here says, this. So they mentioned that the defaults, right, upload the BitLocker key to the Microsoft account, right? What we've already mentioned. They go on to say, and I'm quoting this particular comment, this is why the FBI can compel Microsoft to provide the keys. It's possible, perhaps even likely, that the suspect didn't even know they had an encrypted laptop. Journalists love the Microsoft gave framing because it makes Microsoft sound like they're handing these out because they, like law enforcement, but that's not how it works. If your company has data that the police want and they can get a warrant, you have no choice but to give it to them. I'm going to come back to that because I don't entirely agree with that particular point. The part that I found interesting, and I can kind of agree with is this next part here, is this makes the privacy purists angry, but in my opinion, it's the reasonable default for the average computer user. It protects their data in the event that someone steals the laptop, but still allows them to recover their own data later from the hard drive.
100,000% agreed.
Agree. Same.
Microsoft doesn't need information of their own to get without something from the user.
Yep. And I agree. That is a reasonable default. The problem I have with it as it is today, the user, your average user, I'm thinking like my mom, my sister, people who aren't power users or sysadmins like those of us that are on the show or watch this show, at no point is this ever made apparent to the end user.
That is the problem.
That's the problem.
There needs to be a banner. We can unencrypt your data without your permission if you do not.
And
whatever.
I bet
even
you,
if it's the default.
Yep.
Like you can click next here if you want, and if you do that, we can decrypt your data. That's fine. That's fine as long as you say it.
I would bet money Microsoft Legal would come and tell us, well, we do mention that in the EULA. It's probably buried in the EULA somewhere. I'm going to have to go look because I'm curious now, but I bet you that's where it's at.
Yeah, and I'm sure Microsoft Legal is also perfectly aware a lot of those EULAs have been thrown out on the simple grounds that humans can't read them.
It's very true.
I know that they know that, so okay, do better.
Yeah. So
I don't think Microsoft Legal made the decision. I think somebody else made the decision, and maybe because Microsoft Legal is a very powerful and an intelligent group, but they can't see everything, and stuff gets slipped by them. And
right. And so all this talk of defaults brings me to the next point I really want to talk about here, and that is this wasn't always the default. It wasn't always this way with BitLocker. I'm not sure exactly when it changed, but it changed at some point.
It was a slow roll of one piece at a time until...
Yep, it was. It was a slow rollout. I don't remember at what point it flipped, right? And so people have heard me mention this on the show before, and I can't take credit for this one. I've mentioned it before. I heard this first from Steve Gibson over on the Security Now podcast. This is the tyranny of the default. Right? This is the tyranny of the default. Your average end user has no idea about any of this. And they say, well, okay, the default settings, yeah, I don't care. They know what they're doing, right? Hit next. And it's just accepted as best practice because that's the default. And no communication is ever made. And this goes back to my rant about web browsers at the end of 2025, that episode I did where I ranted about web browsers. So go check out that episode if you haven't yet, but I'll give you the short bit that's relevant for this conversation. Firefox made the claim that they're going to start becoming an AI browser, right? But they said that choice will remain with the user.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's do another history lesson here. History will show us across multiple products in the industry over the years that once a setting or a feature or something new in a product gets enough inertia, enough users using it, enough of a monetary reason for the vendor to make it the default, pressure from regulatory bodies, whatever, enough inertia will eventually make a questionable feature. It will make that user choice, in the case of Firefox here, no longer user choice. It then has a way of becoming the default. And in a situation like this with BitLocker, nobody really knows, at least right now, I don't really know when that became the default. But now all those keys that live in Microsoft accounts are at risk of being divulged based on law enforcement overreach, right? So
you know what? And I'm not even. I'm going to drop that. I don't even care about that. They're at risk of somebody with deep pockets getting a hold of somebody
yeah,
with the power to.
yep,
This is the problem. It's easy to look at Microsoft. Well, I don't trust Microsoft. I know a lot of people have kind of that default attitude. I don't trust Microsoft. Great. Okay. It doesn't even matter if you trust Microsoft because it's not going to come down to Microsoft Corporation. It's going to come down to some dude, maybe two dudes, two women. I don't know. People, humans. And it's not going to be very many humans. It's just going to, the hard part is going to be figuring out which humans you have to push over to get what you want and then finding out what their price is.
Right.
That's what it is. This is the problem. This is what's wrong with it. And it's not law enforcement. It could be anybody. It could be, I don't know, some jerks like I'm going to come to your house and do horrible things with your family if you don't give me my BitLocker keys. I mean, that would work on me.
Yep. Yep.
Those keys shouldn't exist. They shouldn't exist. They should not be accessible to Microsoft employees, period, full stop. And I still want to make sure we also keep in mind, too, that Microsoft doesn't exactly have a high level of morale right now across the organization. So this is not, and again, it's not theoretical because we have historical precedent of exactly the thing I'm talking about happening.
Right.
So, and it wasn't the FBI that did it. It wasn't local law enforcement. It wasn't the good, however you feel about law enforcement, it wasn't them that was doing it.
Yep. And I maintain, right, and this is the hill I'll die on for this episode, is that if Apple can push back, Microsoft can.
Absolutely, 100%. But then again, we don't know there's always something we don't know going on. But again, it's not going to be Microsoft Corporation. It's going to have been some human or multiple humans who had the correct leverage applied to them to make them do what they wanted. And that is going to always be the thing that we're going to have to come back to.
And from a feature standpoint, let's talk about features again for a second, because, talking about Apple, for your iCloud account, if you want, again, let's talking about the tyranny of the default. By default, Apple admits that they can decrypt your iCloud account if they want to. And to their credit, they tell you that they can do that, right? Now, there is a feature where you can actually go, and I forget exactly what it's called, secure mode, I want to say, where you can tell Apple, I don't want you to have my decryption key anymore. I'm going to take it and manage it on my own. And they tell you everywhere, all over the place with big red letters, make sure you document this, because if you lose it, we cannot help you, right? They give you the tools to manage and hold that key yourself if you want. Yep. So
I would argue, not just from Apple, I've seen plenty of interfaces built by other people. All the bells and whistles, all the warnings, all the red letters, everything you need. This wheel is very round. I don't want to hear Microsoft say it's too hard.
Right. Yep.
They can they can steal it from somebody who's too small to do anything about it if they want. So that's don't give me this too hard nonsense.
The tech is out there, and big vendors are doing it in very complex environments, right? So it's possible. And
cheap little crypto apps are doing it. If you open, or sorry, if you get your, the crypto address, the wallet, whatever, you have to have your private key, and they tell you in a billion different ways, if you lose this, your money is gone.
Yep.
Cheap little nickel and dime, two dudes in a basement cranking out some crypto app. They can figure it out. Microsoft can do it.
This is going to be me. This is me being salty a little bit here. I bet you if they ask nicely, Copilot could do it.
Facts. Ooh, that's fun. Hey, Copilot, what can I say on this line of code other than sorry, something went wrong? Oh, I made people mad with that, but they didn't like hearing that. They don't like,
Uh,
Do better.
for the record, just to make all the legal folks happy, right? Everything in this episode is clearly our opinion, but we have some pretty strong opinions that are informed by a lot of history working in the industry and with Microsoft products.
Yes.
So,
And others.
and others, yes, and others. The other one I wanted to make sure we mention here, Eric, is that let's talk about escrow and the key itself, right? I think we've established already that encryption is meaningless if somebody controls the key, right? Really what we're talking about here is control of the key. And we've talked about, I think we've had very much a focus on the consumer side of thing, but we get more into the enterprise space, right? We have more options in terms of control of the key, right? We could, we could control it with AD, if we want. Store it in on-prem AD. We could store it in Intune. Now, I'd argue that's still Microsoft, but there has been no evidence to date, to my knowledge, of them being able to pull it out of on-prem AD, things like that, right?
Right.
There's no method that I'm aware of. So
I hope there's none at all.
I hope there's not at all either. And I know AD pretty well. I don't believe there's a method for it. I really don't. But if anybody does know of a method that they could use for that, be sure to let us know. You can comment on the YouTube or the Spotify versions of the show, or let us know out at the GitHub discussions board. Again, link to that in the show notes. But I think the other key thing that I wanted to call out here in terms of sysadmins in the trenches having to wonder about this, a lot of admins assume that BitLocker's behavior is exactly the same everywhere. And unless you really know BitLocker, that's a safe assumption, right? But once you understand how it works, there's all these different ways that it can manage the keys. You may be blindsided by the fact that, BitLocker could unlock your CEO's laptop Microsoft could unlock your CEO's laptop if they were so compelled to by court of law.
Right.
Something to think about, right?
Or again, that poor little dude with way too much gambling debt who also happens to have access to those BitLocker keys.
Yep. Very true. Very true. Or, boy, I'm really going down a rabbit hole now. A competitor, corporate espionage angle. I'm getting a little tinfoil hattish,
but it's not tinfoil hat stuff. All the stuff happens. Corporate espionage is a thing. It's not. We didn't invent it. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's out there. It's happening right now.
That's true.
And it's always you're a security guy too, and I'm sure you beat the drum as hard as I do. The humans are the weak link. They really are. And when we're showing you, these are the humans most susceptible to the problem. And they're like, well, let's add more humans to it. Cool. That'll fix it. It won't fix it. Those keys shouldn't exist. Microsoft should not be able to escrow somebody's keys, period, unless there's an external control over whether somebody can get them. And again, like here in the United States, like one thing, none of your phone carriers are on your site except one, Boost Mobile.
Really?
Boost Mobile. All you have to do is you have a Boost Mobile phone and you break it. They can't do anything. They don't back up anything. Not great for you as a consumer. If you're like, I broke my phone, can you come in and you go into Verizon, broke my phone, no problem. It's all in the Verizon cloud. We'll just put it back on the new one, okay? Boost Mobile can't do that. But also when the feds come in and go, we want all the data off this guy's phone, on now. So I know the feds really don't like Boost Mobile for that reason, because they can't get anything out of it. They're like, we don't back anything up. Nothing is here. We don't have anything for you. Sorry. We don't keep records. We don't do any of that. Right. So the feds really hate that. But if you're a privacy person and really super private, well, Boost Mobile is probably your jam. Just remember that if you break your phone, it's all gone now. So yeah, it's very popular with drug runners and stuff. And the person who told me this, I'm like, oh, Boost Mobile, boosting cars, surprisingly, those aren't the people that are using them. It's really the drug runners. I'm like, it seems like a missed opportunity there, but okay.
again, I'm going to cover us with the legal folks. For the
Yeah, I'm
record,
not condoning breaking any laws. I just
yes, those of us here at SysAdmin Weekly, the hosts, our affiliates, and associated peoples and persons, we do not condone criminal behavior of any kind,
none.
nor do we encourage it.
No, and like just be like me. I follow all the laws on the simple grounds that, if nothing else, I know that I would not survive in prison. So, just
yeah,
if I have no other motivations, like prison is a really good deterrent for me. So I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy. And I think all y'all should be too. Just don't start nothing, won't be nothing. That's my favorite line from all movies ever. Will Smith said it in Independence Day. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing. I'm like, you know what? That's a great philosophy that I'm going to live by.
There you go. And I will reiterate one more time, Microsoft Legal, if you're listening, this was all our opinion. ... Just FYI.
Well, I can put a period on. This is all my opinion. I mean, I do believe it's all factually informed. And
yep, correct. Same. I believe it's factually informed as well, too. It doesn't paint a good picture for them. It really doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And from a business standpoint, I can see a whole lot of people going, if that's the case, I need to get my stuff off OneDrive yesterday and Exchange Online. And yeah, because again, Microsoft shouldn't have access to that. Part of this, there's got to be a trust somewhere. And the only thing that they're kind of sitting on is where you're going to go. Because I'm certainly not going to put any data on Google that I care about.
Right.
No way I'm doing that. Apple doesn't have the infrastructure to do it.
And I mean, I want to be clear here as well, too. This particular article that spawned this whole conversation was about accessing data on an endpoint. I have not seen to date anywhere that says the same thing can happen for a 365 tenant or account or an Azure account or services, right? But the question would certainly be in the back of my mind based on this event.
But in my mental map of that long rant I was alluding to earlier, like part of it was one of the things that we had. So before Nadella came to Microsoft, they had a very bad trust problem. And some of it was from the way the company was run internally, that the employees didn't really trust each other. And then that kind of spilled over that, like, the world, like, we need Microsoft, but nobody really trusted them. And Nadella did a lot of things well that I will say, yes, he made a lot of good things, but he didn't really do anything to improve Microsoft's trustability stance, in my opinion. I don't think he did anything to address that. So we know, because we now have evidence in our hot little hands that says they'll turn over our BitLocker keys to law enforcement, which means they have our BitLocker keys. So now we have to trust that they don't have keys to our other things. When all of a sudden you're like, well, you've been pushing really hard for me to take everything into your cloud. And I already had kind of this sketchy trust thing to begin with that you never really addressed. So even though we don't know that, do you believe that they don't?
Yeah, and and
if somebody says, no, I don't trust them one little bit, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to get all my stuff out of there now, it's like, I don't really know that Microsoft's going to have an answer for that. Where are they going to come back and go, you remember that one time we did this trustworthy thing? What would that list look like?
Well, I'm sure they would. Look, here's the SFI, the Secure Future Initiative. Here's this thing we're doing. Okay, yes, that addresses security.
Correct, but it doesn't address if you've got my key sitting there, none of that is worth anything, especially if, again, Jason with bad gambling debt can get to my BitLocker keys. It's no longer about Microsoft, is it?
I'd love to see, what would put me at ease for that specific case? What is the process for accessing said BitLocker keys? My hope would be it takes more than one person to do it.
Also remembering Microsoft has employed some of the smartest people that ever existed. And just because the process involves multiple people doesn't mean somebody isn't like, yeah, but.
Yep, exactly. That's
that
true.
person might have really bad gambling debt, or I don't know. I keep coming back to that one because it seems like that's a good way in, but
all valid points though, and all valid questions to be asked for sure. So I'll have to keep an eye on this one and see how it plays out. But it's the last reason I was holding on to my remaining Windows box in the house is I game on it, and well, I don't play any games these days that can't run on top of Linux, right? Especially with all the enhancements that Valve has made with gaming on Linux. I'm there's no reason, right? And so all my server infrastructure in the house is now running on Debian. I run Mac OS for my daily driver, right? I don't know. There's a lot of straws building up on that camel's back, man. Anyway. Well,
and Microsoft is not really enticing you to not do that, and I think that's really that's really what bothers me for their future. Like,
yeah.
I'm not anti-Microsoft by any stretch of the imagination. I think they made a lot of really, really bad decisions in the last decade or so that we may be seeing their long, slow end of empire
And
on the
for the
horizon.
record, I really hope that's not the case. I mean, I hope it's apparent for the folks that listen to the show that I think, Eric, I don't want to speak for you, but we both love Microsoft products and we've built careers using them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really hope that's not the case. And I felt like, and this is probably a whole different episode, but I felt like 5, 10, maybe 10 years ago, once Azure really started taking off, 365 really started taking off, Microsoft was making a lot of positive movements in the industry. We're going to be, for example, we're going to be carbon negative by whatever it was, 2030 or something like that. And then AI came along. And in my opinion, they were so afraid of missing the train on that one, like they did with mobile, that every other consideration went out the window. Every other consideration went out the window. The carbon negative thing, you don't hear about that anymore. Everything.
I actually saw something from them today on LinkedIn that came across, but it didn't really feel like the commitment was behind it like it used to be.
Yeah, it's just they're a different company now, and it's sad to see.
Yeah, and what's hilarious to me is let's do another history lesson. A history that is unfolded right before many of our eyes. Apple. You will find people who legitimately believe that Apple invented stacks of technology. They invented this and they invented that and they invented the other. Like, actually, they were usually third or fourth to the game on that particular technology. And yet they've somehow managed to hoodwink most of the world into believing they started it. So clearly, you don't have to be first, second, or even third to the game to not only dominate it, but to make people think it's yours.
Right.
They have done that. Apple has done it. I can show it to you. I'm still surprised. I thought Steve Wozniak had died because he didn't say, well, Apple invented HoloLens. Like, what happened? Yeah, we own virtual reality. We invented virtual reality. It's all ours. And you know what? I guess the century is still young. There's still time. So, So anyway, point being, that was a dunk on Apple. I can't help it. But point being here that Microsoft, we're going to miss the boat. Well, A, you don't have to catch every boat. B, you don't have to necessarily be first to be best. Usually the first isn't best. So on and so forth. It's like, no, don't sell yourself. Don't compromise yourself to try to be best at something that doesn't really even exist yet, and we don't know where it's going to go. It's just there's so much ridiculousness here. And that one, and as I was saying, the bad decisions, their big bad decisions is their complete inability to do more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
That they've somehow lost. Like, going back to the 90s, it's like Microsoft I don't think they would have said it out loud, but it's like, we are a company that sells Microsoft Office, and we sell Windows so that we can sell more Microsoft Office. Right. And then that's kind of where they went from. But they had a focus and they did it. You can argue about the quality of the products, but they at least did that part well.
Yeah.
We sell Microsoft Office and Windows to run more Microsoft Office. They did those two things very well. Right.
Yeah.
And then they branched, fine. But then they just suddenly became like, we can't do more than one thing at a time, despite having thousands of employees. It's like suddenly, like, the entire company has to do exactly one thing and nothing else, and everything else is secondary. So not wanting to miss the boat on AI is fine, but the fact that everything else has to pay for it.
And that's my perception, but it really certainly looks like that way. It's everything AI at the cost of everything else.
Yes.
And
But again, history. It was before that. It was Azure at the cost of everything else.
yep, exactly.
And they're too big of a company, and they have too many smart people for that to be the kind of thing that we even ever say.
Yeah. Well,
how come Chase can sell car loans and credit cards and checking accounts and do just fine at all of those things? Clearly you don't need a central focus.
right. We can do more than one thing at once. So, well, that's I think that's another episode there. We're gonna have to dig in there. Is where is Microsoft headed in our opinion, and is it a good place or not, or why?
Maybe the episode ought to be: do they even have a vision of where they're headed anymore? It seems like they just follow the latest fad, and then if they don't win, I'm taking my ball and going home. And
I think the episode or the direction they would say is AI ? Right? AI?
Is that even a direction? I mean, that's the big thing. Is like that's not a. We're going to space. Okay, where? Where in space? You want to go to another planet? You want to go to another star? You want to go to the? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, good point. Well, we'll have to put that together and chat it out. I think that's a whole other episode. So, but other than that, I think we beat this particular topic like a dead horse at this stage. But yeah,
I think I'm just being mean, and it's not helpful.
I'll put all the relevant links in the show notes, folks, so you can check that out. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this as well too. I am very cognizant of the fact that I tend to be overzealous. I don't want to say overzealous, but I tend to be pretty passionate about privacy and security and all that. I mean, I'm a security guy, right? So I guess it makes sense. But so I get fired up when I see privacy being impacted by large vendors like this. But anyway, with that, I guess I'll remind everybody that you can find all the links for the show out at www.sysadminweekly.com. Again, if you want to share your thoughts with us, drop us a comment out on YouTube, on Spotify, or on the new GitHub discussion board. You can also reach our inboxes at contact@sysadminweekly.com as well too. Other than that, Eric, thanks for spending some time with us on your 45-degree, Gulf of Mexico beach there.
It's dropped a few degrees since we started, so this is great.
So you're 41 degrees.
Here. I'm not even going to look. I'm going to look. I talked myself back into it. 33, so a wee bit above. Still mid 40s.
No, mid 40s.
The low was 33 for the day. It didn't. It's not there yet.
All right. Well, we'll let you get back inside before it starts getting too cold. But appreciate you spending some time with us, my friend, especially being bundled up outside. This is a SysAdmin Weekly first.
Probably the last. I think I'll do it from the comfort of my home from now on.
There we go. Well, appreciate you being here as always, my friend. So
thank you.
Those of you watching, thanks for spending some time with us today, and hopefully you found some value out of today's episode. I already mentioned all the different ways you can get a hold of us, so I won't make you do that again, but I will say thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you again next week for a future episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.